Now we're given a couple of choices here. I'm going to talk about specify in this video, but in the next video I'm going to talk about what's called a format file. So let's just deal with the specify. What we're specifying is at the end of the row, how do we know that the row is over? Because it has a control line feed. That's the new line character. Okay, so you could see that maybe you have rows separated by vertical bars, maybe they're separated by commas. I don't know. Generally speaking, in the Windows world, we're working with rows that are separated with the control line feed, so the new line. Now, how are the columns delimited? Notice that it didn't even try to read our source data to guesstimate what it was. It just suggests a tab. I need to change mine because mine is actually a comma separated values file. So it's a C, comma, CSV. And so now where do I want to put it? Well, I need to put it in my SQL server. I can reuse, though, my previous connection from the execute SQL task. And I just need to be able to load up the right table, so product. Okay. Now, one little word here about working. Oh, God, I hate describing and explaining this because it's no fun. So the table has to exist before it's going to show up in this drop down, right? This drop down right here, you notice it's just reading the tables in the database, and you can click this refresh tables, which if new tables have been added behind the scenes. If product doesn't exist, now let me just say okay here. Remember, we're creating the table in step number 1 here. So the chances are, if you're trying to do this all in one fell swoop, that the table does not exist prior to getting to the bulk insert task because you haven't created it. You just typed the code in or used the data file to do so. Let me show you what I mean. Maybe I'm not being clear. There is no table product anymore, okay? Back into SSIS. Pretend that you had laid out your execute SQL task without executing it, without creating the dbo.product table, and now you're trying to build your bulk insert task. And you go to your connection, let me refresh the tables, and you scroll down, and there is no product table now. Okay, so what are you going to do? You want to go into the products table? You can't. You can't do it easily. Look at this. You come over here and you start typing. That's, by the way, the sound of me banging on my keyboard in case you don't recognize it. It makes it look like we can actually type over that, but we can't. Okay. So here's what you can do. Here's one option you can get around here. You can put in the bogus table name. Pick a table. Say OK. However, now come back over to this and right click and go to the properties, and you do get an editable field over here. Let's just find right there. You see the destination table name. Now you just simply change it in the properties. So again, let me just show you how to get here. You're going to right click on your bulk insert, go to properties, and just now you can type in products. Products. There. Okay. So silly, in my opinion. Let me go back over here because we're not quite ready to run the bulk insert, but we have specified what makes a row and what defines a column. Flip over to the options. Notice it does remember the products. Okay. Now, we have different file types. We have different code pages. What is the source data in? Is it in Turkish? Is it in Korean? No, it's just a raw file, and it's a character file, just a basic, good old-fashioned text file. That's what character is. There are options of native, so, and wide native, and wide character, wide car, wide char, however you say it. I created a car file, char file, which is just a straight up text file. If you export from SQL Server, you have the option to create a native file. So it's in native SQL Server format. It's not comma separated. It's not something like that. It's a native format specifically for SQL Server. So it's specifically meant that I export from one SQL server to a text file with the purpose, the intent that I'm going to import into another SQL server. That's the reason you would use either the native or the wide native. The difference between regular car/native and wide car wide native is wide means Unicode support. So mine's just a straight up car file. The batch size is the number of rows that get committed. If it's defaults to 0, which means all of the rows in the text file, it basically starts a begin tran, uploads the rows, and then commits the entire batch of rows. If you want to, you're probably better off doing this in batches of 1,000, 2,000, 4,000. Somewhere in that range allows SQL Server to checkpoint a little bit easier, makes it easier on the server, better performant. So your batch size of 1,000 is a fairly standard number. 5,000 I've seen as well. Somewhere in that range is a good number. I can't tell you what yours should be. It's dependent on how much data, what type of data, what's going in. So you'll probably have to test it. And you'll likely find that there will be some swings, but you're probably going to have to get into the multi-millions of rows for you to notice enough to say, oh, well, 1,723 is way better than 1,120. The last row and the first row, we actually need to deal with this first row. Our text file, let's take a look at the data 02. Notice that our text file has, for the first row, quote unquote, that it sees, it actually has the column name. So we can't load that. That's not actually part of the data. That's the metadata. So we want to tell it to skip the first row. So this is a one-based indexer, and it says that the first row in the text file is the row we want to start. No. We want to skip the first row. We want to load the second row. Now you can specify, if there's 16 rows in the table, you could say, well, I only want to load all the way through the last row of number 10. So in this case, it would only load rows 2 through 10. 0 says load the entire table. Now, some other very important features down here, particularly under the options. Let me just zoom in on here. So the check constraints, do you want your check constraints, your key constraints checked during the load? It defaults to yes. That's a good reason to keep that. It will slow down the load a little bit. Do you want to keep nulls? So when a text file contains comma, comma, and there's no actual content in that particular column of that row, do you want that to become a null in the database, or do you want the database to actually apply a default value to that? Okay, it's your choice. Enabling the identity insert. If you are inserting, this is very important, so pay close attention to this. If you're inserting into a table that has an identity column, it will skip the column for the identity column and simply apply the identity value. So if you have rows that are in the text file that you want to load up into the identity and have them actually be put in that column, you have to enable that. Gosh, it's hard to explain without an example. Let me show you what I mean, okay? Table lock means it'll lock the whole table, and by default triggers will not fire. So if you have business logic that's done in a trigger that you need, then you will want to tell it to fire triggers. Let me give you an example. Let's say that we have a table, course, and in the course table we have a course ID, int not null, identity 100, skips by 1. And it's the primary key, and then you got the course name, and etc. Right? So you'd have other columns in it. Let's go create ourselves a text file. Call it course. Course ID, comma, course name. This is going to be course 512, and it's intro to XML, Core 754 is SharePoint 2010. Whatever. This course is SQL Server 2009 87 DBA, so quite a while from now. These are numbers that I may want to preserve when I load this text file into the database table. Back over here in my bulk insert task, under the options here, this is not checked by default. And so what it will effectively do is it will skip my values. The values in the text file for course ID, these right here, 756, 8756, those will not be loaded in, and instead we'll get an identity column value. So if you want these numbers preserved for the identity column, you have to make sure to check that column. Now we'll do this more in the next video. I'm just going to say go for this one. We're ready. Do you need to sort the data? Is the data already sorted? Makes it later easier for indexes here. How many errors before this task bombs out? By default, if a single row errors out, then that kills the whole task. Many times you don't actually want to do that. You want to pipe that error somewhere else. So you might allow many different errors. We've got to get a little deeper into the course for that part of it. But I'm ready here to go. If you'll remember, let me just get you where we are. We have, let me close out of this. There is no products table, right? So we're in the learnitfirst.com database. So let's just hit go. We're going to create or replace the table, and then we want to load that text file up, and we get an error message. Yay. What did I do? Products. Did I name it product? Oh, I did, didn't I? That's what it is. So I created the table product, but then I loaded products. Hey, you'll do it too. Trust me. So again, I'm going to be able to now, though, go to editing the bulk insert task, because the table actually exists right now. You can see it, and I can choose it. And it loads it up. We should get all green here. Very quick, very easy. Coming over here, you can actually see that it did load the data. Very easy, right? Wrong. How many times are you going to have a one-column text file that works that easily? Not often, my friend. I got to take you to the next video, and let's talk about dealing with real-world situations and the pain in the you-know-what that the bulk insert can be.